My name's Miranda and I started playing the double bass when I was 8 years old.
My name's Jon Thorne and I play the double bass. Or the double bass sometimes plays me.
My name's Duncan Lyall and I play the double bass.
My name's Ben Nicholls, I'm a double bass player.
I don't think I was ever aware of the double bass as a thing until I turned up at my primary school assembly to see an array of instruments. My mum and dad are both musicians themselves, so when I went home saying that I'd seen instruments in assembly, they listened, and I was taken out of school once a week to the nearest town to have double bass lessons.
I guess the first double bass which I really encountered I've got an older cousin who was learning some double bass and had a double bass in his house, which he would get out and play. And I remember that, being younger, looking up and going, that's cool. So then I started having lessons at school, and that was the start of the double bass journey.
The thing that led me to play the double bass was I heard Danny Thompson on a track called Watching You Without Me off the B-side of Kate Bush's Hounds of Love album. And it just completely floored me. That I was just like, it was just some magisterial brilliance I hadn't experienced before. I bought a really, really nasty plywood practice instrument off someone from the Halle Orchestra for 250 quid. An instrument so bad that 4 notes would make your hands fall off. I just fell completely in love with it immediately.
When I started learning how to play the double bass, I was in secondary school, I was in my music class. I think I was in first or second year at high school. And the teacher said, would anyone like to take on a double bass lesson? So I just thought, yep, I'll do it. And I didn't even know what it was. I thought it was maybe a wind instrument, maybe a bassoon or something like that.
I sort of kept going with the double bass, and I went to City University, who did a course jointly with Guildhall in London. And so I was doing more classical double bass there. At the time, this would be 1990, 91, I suppose. It was the tail end of that wine bar scene in London, so there was absolutely loads of gigs going on. And I started playing with there's a duo called the Nelson Brothers, who one of them played acoustic. He was like a finger picker acoustic, and the other one was electric. And they basically played covers, but the finger picking one, Steve, was like a massive fan of Bert Jansch, Nick Jones, Dick Gaughan, Paul Brady, all this stuff. So he'd be slipping all this folk stuff in, very inappropriate at most of those gigs, because everyone's like, what, can I play any Dire Straits? Which was kind of how I ended up getting into folk, I suppose.
Well, I remember seeing Alias Ron Kavanagh play at Towersey Folk Festival when I was a really little girl, and I used to play Alias Ron Kavanagh tune that's so brilliant. It was I can't remember what the tune is, but I learnt to play it on recorder, and then through being taken to Cropredy Festival and whatever, I used to just play around with bass, and I played for my mum and dad's Cayley band, so that got me into folk really.
I grew up around folk music. My dad plays a bit of accordion and sings some folk songs, plays guitar. He actually started a folk club in the town that I grew up in. I did start taking the double bass along to the folk club when I was at school and joining in a little bit there. And then I went to study. There was a band that had formed on the course that I was studying on, a folk band that had formed, and they wanted a double bass player. And they said, will you come and play with us?
I sort of had a kind of a willful ignorance. I thought I just locked myself. I thought if I locked myself in a room with a video player and lots of music, and I just immersed myself in it, then I'll find my way. But of course, within a short space of time as a self-taught player, you start hitting limitations because your ear only goes so far if you don't really understand harmony. And then I got in a big band in Manchester called John Ellis's Big Bang, which had some quite serious charts and arrangements and passages where you had to be able to sight read a bit. And chords that you had to be clear. You had to be able to spell that chord properly, arpeggiate it, or play the extensions or whatever. I think what happened as I progressed was I became more and more interested in accompanying singers, I think. And more into the idea of storytelling through songs, and how to accompany that and mix with that. And that naturally takes you into folk music, because that's just the bed of it, isn't it? That's the bedrock of it.
There were certainly double bass players that I admired when I was getting into and playing folk bass. Danny Thompson goes without saying. I saw him on his Whatever Next tour and was inspired by him. Chico Lopez, I remember just playing that to death. But mostly I think it was just through osmosis, through hearing, it surprises me when I speak to people and friends and they can't hear the bass line. And I'm like, well, that's the first thing I listen to.
I would go and play gigs with this folk band that I was playing with at uni, and people would come up to me at the end of the gig and said, "You remind me of a young Danny Thompson," and I would be kind of thinking, right, great, but I've not really heard him before, and I had, but I just wasn't aware of who he was. Closer to home, Ewan Vernal, who... when I first saw him, he was playing with Capra Cayley and also the Mike McGoldrick band. I remember specifically completely changing my right hand technique after watching a video of him playing and going, how is he actually playing the instrument, because I felt like he was getting this great tone that I wasn't getting.
I guess it must have been in the late 80s, and Worthing Library, in its genius at the time, as the world was moving into CDs, decided to sell off its entire vinyl record collection. And I'd just go, oh, that cover looks cool. Or if something had a picture of a double bass on it, I'd go, oh, what's that? And I'd just buy all these records. And I mean, one of the ones which was quite significant I bought, there was a Gary Peacock album with Keith Jarrett on it, and his solo album. And the first time I listened to that, it was like, that's not like anything I've heard before, because he's got that kind of real lyrical style. He's all up and down the neck.
The thing that really drew me in was hearing this sort of counter melody Danny does a lot of that, Danny Thompson. He plays in and around a singer, sometimes over the singer in a very sort of expressive way. And I met Danny, after I'd been playing for a couple of weeks, I went to the Band on the Wall to see his Whatever band, and I met him. And he was remarkably encouraging and really lovely to me. And he said, people say there's two kinds of music, good and bad. He said, that's not true. It's just music, and just go into it with an open mind and kind of an open heart. And if you like it, play it. And if you don't, leave it alone. But it's all sort of branches on the same tree. Just pick which one you want to swing off,
There's like a freedom in playing folk music because it feels like there's less rules in a way. Than maybe some other styles of music. Maybe because it's not quite so established, folk double bass playing. I'm really not sure what folk double bass playing is, to be honest. I'm still trying to work it out.
The British kind of finger-picking guitar thing is such a scene, and it's had so many massively strong players over the years. And I think it's cast a big influence over, the way folk music is played and the way it is now even.
Double bassists on the folk scene aren't common. They aren't as common as guitarists and tunes players. If you're looking at playing tunes, there's nothing more satisfying for me than being able to sit on that tune, pedal a G, get a bit funky with it, maybe take kind of a bit of reggae, throw that in, which is so great to be able to do that and have the space to do it.
I suppose if we look at folk music, vocal music is an unaccompanied tradition in Britain. And so anything we apply to it isn't actually traditional. So probably if you're playing double bass on traditional music, here, you're applying an instrument to a tradition where there is no tradition of the instrument, and therefore the only approach is to come up with your own thing.
What I've tried to do throughout my career is actually to develop my voice and then find how to speak that in different situations. So I sort of think less about the genre that I'm in and think more about how am I actually going to appropriately bring my voice into this in a way that enhances the music.
With folk stuff, the only way to be able to play it well, or to personal satisfaction, is to know the shape of the melody. And where the accents come is governed by the shape of the melody rather than any sort of metric bar regime you might try and apply to it. That would be quite different to the way I would approach most other types of music I'd be playing. It's the melody is God.
This bass for 10 years. I bought it from Thwaites in Bushey, near London. It's a German instrument from the Mittenwald region, from 1850, made by somebody called Moritz. I've got a wooden end pin which is made for me by a double bass player in London called Ben Bastin. It regulates the height all the time, so that when the bass comes into me, it'll stay there and I'm not having to hold it. Therefore, when I address it with either arm, I've got the freedom of movement through the instrument that I wouldn't normally have. I have enough of an angle that I can look right down to the bridge, so I can move through with a lot of ease without having to stretch too far or bend my back. So it's quite open for me, the fingerboard. So this is a French double bass. It's signed inside Moët Montgerot, 1925, and I've got 3 mics pickups on the double bass. They've been used in a multitude of different ways. Whether you want a good, just reliable pickup, you can go for the David Gage Realist underneath the bridge there, and then I've got the DPA there, which I find brings a lot of breath into the sound, which I love when you're playing arco. And then I've got a Schertler on body pickup there. Front of house engineers can take a mixture of whatever they want.
So I've had this bass for more than 30 years, I suppose, 35 years even. The strings are Tomastic Spiracores, and the action I guess it's sort of medium, slightly higher than medium maybe, but I just like that as I get a bit of leverage under the string more with it. In terms of the pickups, under the bridge here I have a AccuSound, which is like a piezo strip, and I tend to then, although it's not on here at the moment, clips on here. I have a Audio Technica, it's like a little gooseneck mic which goes under the bridge. But if it's a folky kind of acoustic thing with no drum kit, I would definitely favour the microphone because it has a much more natural sound. But it just gives you the options to go with what you've got. The setup's imperative. The setup on my first double bass was horrific, and I wondered why I couldn't play it for years. And why I kept getting blisters and my hand was falling off, and I said, oh man, this is just too hard, I can't do this, until someone pointed out, you really don't have to have the strings up there. You can take them lower. When you first start playing, get the best bass you can afford. Obviously, the good ones tend to get pretty expensive. Cheaper ones these days, much better than they used to be. You can buy now for about £1,000 a decent Chinese instrument and mod it, put some decent strings on it, change the bridge to a better bridge, have an adjustable bridge so you can experiment a little bit and find the point of balance that's good for you. Either take it into a repairer or a bass player and have some respect for, and just go, right, what do you think it needs doing to this? But just check with them, because there's nothing more off-putting than a bad setup on a bass. It'll just put you off playing forever.
There's probably a bit of a kind of crossover from my bass guitar playing to how I play picks on the double bass. So quite often my thumb will float. And then when I'm playing kind of down the E string, my hand goes flying all the time.
I use quite a straight down finger, and I'm just using the outside edge. And what I'm trying to do is pull the string across the fingerboard. So if I pull it up, you see, and release it, it just twangs. So what I want to do is pull it across. Then I can get the most energy into the string possible. The second finger's got a bit of a softer sound to it. So if I'm playing something that's a bit more ballady and down, I quite often use the second finger.
Also, because one finger's longer than the other, when you're skipping from string to string, that kind of thing, it's a lot easier to do it like that, because you can't do it the other way.
Acoustic music, when you're playing particularly kind of faster tunes, and maybe there's a double bass and a guitar, you are, between the two of you, you're being the full rhythm section, and there's quite often no drums, and I start to play a little bit more rhythmically, so I'll maybe be tapping the strings as well as kind of playing rhythmically. So
a very good way of getting into playing folk stuff, especially if you're playing dance tunes type of things, just play the root note on the key of the song all the way through it. It's fine, even if you're literally just, and you've got to change, but just pedal those notes out. And if you're turning up and it's a session or something, you literally don't know the tune, that's always the best way into it.
It's more important that you play in time than play the right note, and I think that's really important. I feel like everything that you do on the bass contributes to the groove, whether it's like where you take your finger off the string, that it's not just playing the beginning of the note in time, it's playing the end of the note in time as well. And if you move your hand or whatever, if you do that in time, then that contributes to your groove as well.
You can practice on your own, obviously, playing along with metronomes and drum machines, but it's just not the same as playing with other people and hearing how they feel time. You get out there and play with other people, because that's where the real fun in the instrument is. The fun isn't in sitting on your own practicing. The fun's actually, getting out there and enjoying playing music. So, just get a bare kit of essential skills on it, and then go out and just play some root notes under dance tunes, and people will be very happy. And once you're on that pathway, that's the way you go.